Right then, here's a video I've really wanted to make for quite some time. M50 Manifold details video. I will say before I start, it's not on the car yet, it's on the bench. I'm making this video to show you in detail the pipework that's involved and what needs to be put together, and to show you the way that I've done it without a kit. Very briefly before I start, we're talking here about maybe £20 or £30 the parts, so it's not a lot of money. And what I've done here is try and fit the M50 manifold onto, well, fit the parts from the M52 manifold onto the M50 manifold on cheap, and we like on cheap. So I'm going to turn the camera around and I'll give you a rundown of everything that's going on and the differences between the two manifolds. I'm going to put a detailed description of this down in the actual description below the video. If there's any questions or any comments, anything you want to know that I've not shown in the video, refer down there, and if you don't see the answer, please give us a comment and I'll try and answer it with the best solution I can. So on the bench here we've got M52 manifold on the left, the M50 on the right. The first thing that you'll notice that everyone talks about is why are we doing it? We're doing it because the M50 manifold port size is vastly bigger than the M52. For those of you who aren't absolutely sure what we're talking about, you can see in here the port size of the M52 is fairly narrow. The actual port itself is fairly narrow, and then you come on over here to the M50 and we've got a whopping great intake port there. Again, we've got a much bigger runner. So the ultimate goal is to get some gains from the engine by opening up the port size and letting the engine breathe a bit better. You will lose some torque low down, or the general consensus is you lose some torque low down. That can be mapped out, and ultimately it'll allow the engine to breathe right up to the red line, 7,500 revs. One of the things that you really need to do if you're going to do this is you need to get yourself a remapped ECU. I've done that. I've got one sitting on the shelf that you may see. That remapped ECU will unlock some extra HP from the engine. In here we've got M52 on the left, M50 on the right. Now bear in mind, if you're watching this in the US, guys, it's slightly different. On a US M52 you've got a secondary air pump, I believe. On a Euro one you don't have that. So let's get into some details. Basically, you can buy yourself a kit for £100, $150, which does what I'm going to show you for you. It makes it a bit easier. There's two types of kits. There's one which basically includes a throttle adapter plate, we'll come to that in a bit, a new silicon hose, and a few other little bits and bobs. Or you can buy a kit with a lovely anodised aluminium housing which is supposed to accept this part here. Now this is the M52 vacuum port connection, let's give it a name. And in here we've basically got a port here for the crankcase ventilation valve. We've got the air temperature sender, we've got a port here for the idle control valve, we have a small pipe here for, I think, the fuel pressure regulator vacuum line, and a port here for the charcoal canister vacuum line. This is where we come to stuff that's different. I think on an American car this port here is the one that accepts the secondary air pump. Obviously I can't clarify that because I live in the UK, I'm not really sure how it works, but in this UK manifold, just to show you, this is just a little rubber cap full of oil actually, which has been put on from the factory, and that blocks that port off. So we don't need to worry about that one for the purposes of this video. If you're in the US, that might come into it. So what have we done? Right, we've taken these ports and we need to somehow connect them over to this M50 manifold, which has essentially just got the one port at the back which accepts the crankcase ventilation valve, and a couple of separate ones at the back here. In a second we'll just talk about them. The first thing I'll talk about is the throttle plate adapter. To illustrate to you why you need an adapter, on the M52 you've got a flush surface here where the throttle body has a gasket in it, and that mates up to this nice flush bit in the manifold and you create a seal. On the M50 manifold the gasket itself is seated in a groove on the actual manifold itself. So to achieve a good seal between an M52 throttle body and an M50 manifold, we need to somehow either add another seal in here, which is part of some of the kits, or we can make what's called a throttle blanking plate or a throttle plate. I've taken a piece of 1mm steel, a Dremel, a lot of patience, and a template made from the old throttle body, my M52 throttle body, and I've made this plate which is going to bolt on like so, and that's going to seal that inner gasket, which then allows me to flush bolt my M52 throttle body on an M50 manifold. The brake booster connection, which is this one here, is the same in both manifolds, so we don't have to worry about that. That's going to bolt up absolutely fine. And then we get to the point of talking about all this kit. Here we have our M50 setup. Now, copper pipe is cheap, it's easy to braze together with a blowtorch and a bit of solder and some flux. I've got all that, I've done this sort of work before on a central heating system. So what we've got here is a little setup using the original bracketry from the M52, a couple of little plates, I'll describe them in a second, and a hole with the pipework. So, ignoring what's going on in this corner right now, we've got your intake air control valve, your idle control valve, sorry, a little piece of rubber heater hose. We've got a right-angled 22mm hose connector, a T-piece. We have a straight pipe underneath here just to connect the two. A straight pipe going into the original CCV seal. Now, to get that CCV seal to actually sit flush in there, we have to grind off a little bit of plastic from just this point here and this point here. This 22mm piece of copper pipe will sit in that seal absolutely perfectly. I wonder if I can just show you that. If I get the camera right round, you may be able to just make out in there where that copper pipe comes to and how well it actually sits in that CCV seal. It's absolutely perfect, guys, so really piece of cake stuff to use. So we've brazed together a few sections of copper pipe. We've got an 11cm one here, I think, roughly speaking. We've got the T-piece, we've got another right angle over here. We have a little piece here. I actually think I made this a little bit too long, this one, but I'm not too fussed. It's 9cm, that one. We have another right angle. We've got another short piece of pipe in this side, which is about, I think, about 4cm, 40mm long. And then we've got a rubber hose here which goes into the back of the CCV. Over to the right here, we've got an M12 hose barb with an 8mm actual barb itself, barb connection. This screws absolutely perfectly into the old temperature switch which came out the M50 manifold. So you're looking at M12 by 1.5 thread, I think, and 8mm hose barb. This is where I believe the secondary air pump connection goes on the M50 manifold. This one came from the US, this manifold, so it had the port in it already. I think I'm going to use that as the small vacuum line for the fuel pressure regulator, but I'm not positive yet. If I can, I may drill a hole in the actual copper pipework and try and braze in a piece of brake line, but I'm not sure. I'm going to make a decision on that when I come to it. And then if I spin it round, I should be able to, if I turn it this way, I'll give you a little idea of what we're doing with the plates. So in here we've got a single plate here and here. These plates are made of, I think it's 1.5mm thick steel, so they're pretty strong stuff. They came out of an old Mitsubishi gearbox, believe it or not. These bolt down onto 2 points on the manifold body itself, which are already there. And the bracketry, which you can see here, that's actually flipped 180 degrees round from what the orientation it sat in the M50 manifold, in the M52 setup, is bolted down using captive screws. Now if I can just get under here, I should be able to show you. There's one captive bolt in there with a little nut on it, and if we turn it round, there is actually another one hidden underneath this rubber hose. So apart from a couple of plates, a bit of copper pipe, a flat steel plate and a hose barb, everything else you see here has come off the M52 car. It's really easy, you know, for the sake of, I don't know what you call this, I mean the hose pipes probably cost me somewhere in the region of £12. I got the actual straight piece of pipe from a chap that was doing a central heating install in a house below me, it cost me nothing. The connectors I bought extra of just in case I cocked anything up, that cost me £12 or £13. The hose barb was about £6 from the E of the Bay. And the metal plate that you've seen and the other little metal plates cost me basically nothing because I had bits of steel sitting around the garage. So that's your setup. As I've said, it's not on the car yet. When it goes on the car, we're going to be putting new intake manifold gaskets in here. We will connect up all the vacuum lines. We're going to slightly adapt the idle control valve vacuum line to make sure that it connects properly. And hopefully, all being well, we won't have any vacuum leaks. Vacuum leaks are not our friend. We really don't want any vacuum leaks going on when the actual manifold goes on the car. So what we're going to do is we're going to put it all together, we're going to make sure it's all sealed as best we possibly can, and we're going to make sure it all bolts up. A little couple of pointers for you when we come to do that. You will read about some people who talk of having it open up the actual manifold stud holes. These little holes here are slightly narrower on the M50 manifold than they are on the M52. I had read posts online about people having to open them up with a drill. Now, I've got a spare cylinder head just off to my left hand side that came off my old BMW, so I test fitted this to make sure it fitted before I went and started doing any drilling. Don't drill it, you don't need to. You do need to make sure that when you place the manifold on the head you get it absolutely square. If it goes on at a slight angle it will just bind up and you won't be able to slow it down properly. But it will go, it's tight but it doesn't need any opening up. Apart from this, you're going to need a couple of little rectangular metal plates with a couple of holes drilled in them so you can relocate the fuel rail slightly. The M50 fuel rail sits at just slightly further along the manifold than the M52 does. So to use the M52 injector setup, you need to have these little adapter plates just to allow that fuel rail to be bolted to the manifold at a slightly different point. Apart from that, what you need is an ECU then to unlock the extra power. So I spoke to a chap called Lewis Haler from BMW Enthusiast in the UK. He kindly sent me, for exchange of 110 of my Great British pounds, a new remapped ECU. It should give me a rev limit of 7,200 RPM. I'm not going to see that often, but it's nice to know it's there if I want it. And this will let me breathe all the way up to there. Where do we go from here? I'm pretty happy the setup is good. I've got to do a bit of tidying up of the pipes. I'm going to take it to work, I'm going to grip blast it. I'm going to put a couple of Jubilee clips on the hose pipes that you've seen that haven't got them yet. I'm going to make sure everything is buttoned up well, and then I'm going to drill the holes in the plates, the final holes, just for my bracket tray to sit on it, so it's got a support bracket to the head. And Bob's your uncle, Fanny's your aunt. I think we've got an M50 manifold set up for next to nothing. Do it yourself. Don't go and buy a £150 kit, you don't need it. It's dead easy to do this. Don't be scared of brazing pipes as well. If you want some tips on that, check it out on YouTube. There's tons of guys showing you tutorials about how to braze copper pipe together. It couldn't be easier. You heat pipe up, you stick a bit of flux on the pipe, you stick some solder on it, it flows beautifully and it seals like a dream. No flex on the pipes. And as I said, that 22mm pipe, I think it's 3/4 inch as they call it in the US, fits the seals absolutely perfectly. So give it a shot, don't be afraid. And as I said before, if you've got any questions, stick them down below and I will do my absolute best to answer them. If you can suggest things that I've done wrong that I might do better, again, don't be afraid to stick it down and I'll see if I can improve it. I suppose that's it. Exciting video showing what's coming up. Keep your eyes peeled, guys. You'll see this go on the car when we do the auto to manual swap. In the meantime, thanks for watching. I really appreciate all the viewers and all the comments, guys. For now, PMO out.